welcome back to the class, everyone. We are all aware the best characters in the entire game are our famous Galactic Legends. With that being said, they do also come with the high price of needing 6 Zetas to be applied to each one of them. And it makes me wonder and ask the question, do they really need all of them? So to answer your question before you even ask it, if you get a Galactic Legend and you have the capability to apply all the Zetas to them, you probably should. That being said, as of very recently with the Lightspeed bundles where people have essentially been able to accelerate vastly 2 Galactic Legends right now, we're getting way more characters than we are Zetas in the time that we need to. So we need to start looking, where can we cut corners marginally on characters that might otherwise like the Zeta, but really don't change that much functionally without them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The 5 Zetas that you really can skip, maybe not permanently, but for a very long time on a character and see really little to no change at all. So first up, let's talk about Jedi Master Luke. And to me, this is one of the most obvious of examples of just because you can doesn't mean you should. When we look at his Zeta for his basic, oh my gosh, it is not only bad, but it is completely irrelevant. This attack will critically hit if able and can't be countered. So this is his basic ability. Typically, basic abilities in general aren't that strong to begin with. I guess that's fair. But when you start to really dig into Jedi Master Luke's kit, it just becomes low value. And the reasons why are, number one, he has the ability to use 3 specials. He has this special here, he has Efflux, and then in addition to that, he also has his lead special, which can essentially be refreshed on him whenever you call him into assist using the same thing from another Jedi character. And when you do get to the ultimate ability, his cooldowns for his specials get reduced. So not only on top of having multiple specials, he can actually just completely rotate between the two, never even needing to use a basic again, to which point the only time he will ever really use a basic is when you're calling him into assist. And then when we look at what this does functionally, who cares? Because when another Jedi is calling Jedi Master Luke to assist using his lead ability, 95% of that damage is getting curbed and he's dealing damage off of this max protection, which number one is great. That's way better than his basic would do in general. But number two, you don't really need that attack to critically hit. I mean, I guess the only like small space where this is nice is if you've removed crit immunity from Rey, and this will help get inspired off of her, but there's so many other ways to do it. There's so many other Jedi you can call in. You don't really have to rely on this in that one very specific situation where it might not even matter to begin with. So overall, you just don't need Jedi Master Luke's basic for its damage. You either have his leadership ability to do a lot of your damage, or you have a ton of other characters like Jedi Luke, Cadimandi, Jedi Cal Kestis that are actually good at dealing damage and aren't going to spend most of the battle just trying to control things with Efflux, and they grow beyond. So that is our first Zeta we want to skip, if at all possible, is the basic on Jedi Master Luke. Next up is going to be Slkr, and this one is probably going to be a lot more relevant for people because they're either just unlocked him or they're going to be very close to unlocking him, and that is Press the Advantage. It's actually going to be a unique ability, and it's pretty similar to the Jedi Master Luke in the sense that A, it's not that good, but on top of that, it's just really not relevant. So Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is immune to stagger and can't gain taunt effects. So let's talk about these two things. Number one, he can't gain stagger. This doesn't matter at all. There's not a single counter out there right now that relies on staggering Slkr, and even if there was, even if that were a thing and you suddenly open up some other counter, I guess, when you start to look at his other, actually within the same unique, every single time he or really anyone on his team loses turn meter, they gain 10% max health and protection stacking. So even if you are getting hit with stagger and dropping your turn meter, he's actually getting tankier. He gets something out of this. And if the stagger only hit them, let's say 10% turn meter, then he loses almost no turn meter and he gains a ton of max health and protection on top of that. So it's not even beneficial if that scenario were to exist to the enemy for him to be staggered. And secondly, he can't gain taunt effects. There are very few forced taunt effects from the enemy. The two big ones actually come from both Revens that we have in game. The first one is Darth Revan Lead, which the vast majority of people are not using right now. The most popular team being set on defense right now is Malgus, where Darth Revan is typically put with him. Or if Darth Revan isn't put with him, he's put on some other team on defense. That's not a part of anyone's attack phase to use Darth Revan for Kylo. So if you're like one of the few people that didn't apply the Zeta, they're not going to be prepared for that one going after you. And the other team that actually can ignore taunt when they come to the battle is going to be Jedi Knight Revan's Mark, probably a lot more common, especially because a Jedi Knight Revan counter already exists to SLKR. The issue with that one is that is a total misplay. If you mark SLKR right out the gate in that counter, Hux will just keep passing a turn to him. Lobster will cleanse him. They will keep getting turns and they will run you over. The whole reason why the Jedi Knight Revan and Jedi Knight Luke counter works to beat SLKR is because you contain the entire field, you ability block SLKR, and then you slowly pick apart all of his enemies until he's the only one left. If you go right after him and you let all of his allies do exactly what they want to do with reducing cooldowns, countering, letting SLKR get to his ultimate charge, you essentially have to guarantee that you can kill Kylo either within that mass attack or shortly after. Otherwise, the whole thing will just go completely down the drain. So, can definitely skip the press advantage, at least in the beginning. You might as well get it long term, again, as we said in the very beginning of the video. Next step is going to be JMK's basic. So this one is going to start to become a little bit more relevant. Still all not really that great. And I don't know why CG went to the lengths to just make it so underwhelming. So if the target enemy was dark side, so we've already cut out half the characters in game, or I guess a little half and less the characters in game. Inflict ability block, which that's good. For one turn, excludes Galactic Legends. The issue with this is, number one, doesn't work on light side characters at all, so that kind of stinks. And then once you start to think of the dark side characters, the good dark side characters out there, most of them can't even be ability blocked, or if they can, they immediately cleanse it. If you look at the Sith Empire team that exists out there right now, Darth Revan immediately turns ability block into ferocity, actively actually hurting you. Trey's entire team, they will just cleanse it immediately. Grand Inquisitor led Inquisitors are just immune to it to begin with. Maul can't get it after he hits a certain amount of stacks of anguish. There's just so many like relevant dark side characters that JMK would normally be fighting that he can't ability block anyway, even though they're dark side. And that also excludes Galactic Legends, one of the ones he would really want to hit. And I just find this so weird, because on top of all of that, of it just not having an opportunity to work, it's not like undispellable or irresistible or anything like that. So even in the very few opportunities that you could use this, like get say Hux on an SLKR team or Piet on a Lord Vader team or something like that, JFK's potency isn't good. And those two characters specifically have pretty good tenacity, and he doesn't really even have anyone on the rest of the team, unless I guess you're using R2 to boost his potency. So the chances of you having the guaranteed hit and them not cleansing or something like that is just very low. And just ultimately, the match does not rely on this. JMK is a great character, it is a great team, but this just does not add that much to it. Again, long term you probably won. I heard of some example in TW where apparently if he's on defense with Omicron Mace and you're specifically trying to use Reva to counter it, that can be a pain. But again, we're talking like singular situations that can actually be relevant. This isn't integral to the character to be used, 99 times out of 100. Next up is going to be C. And this one, I will say the one specific use where you're going to want this, and beyond that, you can probably do without it, and that is Unraveled Destiny. So dark side tank allies gain taunt for 2 turns when he uses this. So if you use C in 5v5 against JMK with the counter that involves using armor and multiple pre-taunts, you probably do need this one. Because if you don't have 2 pre-taunts, you just have, let's say, 1 pre-taunt GBA, and you don't have this to make them taunt, what's going to end up happening, or what can happen, is if JMK aims initially for the Brute and Ahsoka assist because it's a special and dispels it, then Cat can immediately leap armor and completely ruin the whole counter. That being said, if you don't do that specific counter, most of this just doesn't matter. So dark side tank allies gain taunt for 2 turns. The reason why this isn't that big of a deal is because the Sieve, which hopefully C will eventually just put out onto the entire team, they can't even counter Sith Eternal, and the vast majority of counters out there that exist, that's how you beat Sith Eternals, by killing him. It's not really killing the ads. The ads are really just there for you to kill them, and then they heal and cleanse the rest of the team, and that's great. But it really doesn't matter if you kill Sidious or you kill Set. Like, one of them's gonna die, they're gonna heal and cleanse the other ones. It's not really important that Set protects Sidious or anything like that, like Maul, Dooku, or whatever tank that you're being able to make them taunt right out the gate, because the Sieve will already kind of do that job, making sure that they can't target him. And beyond that, most of the time, you don't even use C with tanks. A lot of the times, I either take them into solo or maybe with Watt to beat a team like Malgus, and it just doesn't end up being that important to make sure that the tanks protect someone. Again, the big example of that being armor in the JMK situation. But again, if you don't do that, 999 times out of 100, it's just not going to be relevant for what you need. And lastly on our list is going to be Rey's Basic. And this one I have a little bit of a hard time with because I have actually lost one match out of the, I don't know how many times I've fought Rey, hundreds. I don't think we've approached thousands yet. But out of the hundreds of times that I fought Rey, I had one battle where I was using Emperor Palpatine, Starkiller Mara Jade, and because of the damage dealt a second time from Rey's Basic, it killed my Palpatine and kind of ruined the whole counter. Other than that, this just doesn't make a difference. And the reason why is because the raid team as it stands has a ton of damage. Sudden Whirlwind deals massive damage 3 times over, and then I guess more from her Relic Amplifier. Her Heir to the Jedi ultimate has a huge amount of damage that's coming in that's actually true damage. It's going to be able to hit the enemy team really hard, even harder if they have less allies active at the time. Ben Solo was a very effective source of damage, especially if he gets inspired and his mastery starts to increase. He has true damage as well. He has armor shred. He has the healing move for 4 turns. So the team functionally is able to beat most things out there without the little oomph on the damage and Rey's Basic. Again, situationally, long term, you do probably want it, but if you're tight on Zetas, that is the one that you do not apply because, again, the team has damage elsewhere. It doesn't need to rely on the basic of Rey to be able to do that. Really, her basic cleansing is more of a bigger deal to make sure she gets the debuffs off her, and then you can go ahead and hit Starkiller really hard because you didn't get your damage reduced. So again, long term, you probably do want all of these, but if you're in a pinch, you have to just skip one, and you're looking for something where really no situation exists, or maybe only one situation exists where it would be nice to have it, these are the ones you skimp out on. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think as always, and stay awesome.